Good evening, Facebook friends and YouTube followers. This is Rich again, back for your third and final video blog of the night for Saturday, August 30th, 2014, around 7:35 p.m. in Belleville, Massachusetts. The sun's going down, and it was a nice day. The humidity is going to creep back up a little bit beginning tomorrow, and we might get some thunder showers, some sports scores to pass along. The Boston College Eagles opened the 2014 season by beating UMass Minutemen in football by a score of 30-7 at Gillette Stadium. And also, the U.S. men's basketball team beat Finland in the first game of the FIFA Basketball Championships by the score of 114-55. And Finland did not score a field goal in the second half of the season. That's so pathetic. Finland's known for its hockey, but I've never heard of an NBA player come out of Finland. I think the Finnish should really compete in hockey. They're better suited to win championships in hockey than in basketball. This was a atrocious game. The U.S. is probably going to win this tournament easily. So that's about it for that. And my last video blog of the night is my personality profile. Tonight's personality profile is one of the most legendary game show hosts of all time, Tom Kennedy. Tom Kennedy was a classic game show host who had over a 40-year career in entertainment. He hosted a lot of game shows from the late 50s to the late 80s, and he was one of the best game show hosts of all time. He hosted some great classic game shows like You Don't Say, Split Second, Name That Tune, and Password Plus. Tom Kennedy grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, and his real name is Jim Nas, and his older brother was the late Jack Nas, who was also a game show host as well. Jack hosted classic game shows like Dot 2, Beat the Clock, Concentration, and Now You See It, among others. And like Tom was in the U.S. Navy for 2 years. After getting out of the Navy, he went to the University of Louisville and he majored in mechanical engineering, but a couple of years later he dropped out and started his entertainment career as a radio announcer for several radio stations in the Midwest. By 1952, he came to Los Angeles to become a radio DJ for several radio stations in the Los Angeles area, and he also did television work as an announcer and stuff like that. Around 1957, when he was going to be the new spokesperson for Plymouth Cars, one of the guys looked at him and he says, "You look like one of the Kennedys from Massachusetts. You should change your name to Kennedy." And he did, but he first said Rick Kennedy at first, but that didn't sound good. And one of the puts said Tom Kennedy is a winning name. So Jim Nas became Tom Kennedy, and this is when he started to host game shows. The first couple of game shows Tom Kennedy hosted were back in 1958. First one was a big game, a primetime game show on NBC, but that didn't last too long. And then there was another one called Dr. IQ on ABC, but that didn't last too long. Tom still worked on television announcing in Los Angeles for a few more years. Then he got his big break as a game show host in 1963 on NBC when he hosted the classic game show You Don't Say. You Don't Say was a game show where between celebrities and contestants, and the object of the game was for them to don't say the answer, which that became a big hit. It ran for 6 years. It was the #1 game show on daytime television in 1967. It had a primetime version, and that was on the air on NBC for about a year, and it was one of the best game shows in the 60s. But that you cannot see reruns of You Don't Say at all, because NBC had a policy that it destroyed every daytime game show and soap opera and late night, including the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson during that era. So all those shows have been destroyed. You don't see them. Maybe there's a select few popping up around on YouTube, but that's about it. And then after You Don't Say was canceled in 1969, Tom Kennedy went to host a talk show, variety show called The Real Tom Kennedy Show for about 13 weeks in 1970, but it didn't last because not enough stations picked up the show to make it profitable. And then Tom hosted a game show called I Bet in 1971 in syndication. His next big game show hit, Tom Kennedy's game show, was split second, a fast-paced question and answer game show on ABC that lasted for 3 years, from 1972 to 1975. It was produced by Monty Hall and Stephen Haydos. It was a fast-paced game show, great game show, but you don't see reruns of those shows on the air because ABC destroyed the daytime game shows and soap operas in that period as well. So you don't see that game show. Maybe it pops up on YouTube, a few scattered episodes. And also Tom hosted the next big game show he hosted was Name That Tune from 1974 to 1981 in syndication, which was produced by Ralph Edwards. It was probably Tom Kennedy's signature game show, and it was like music with that, like Medley Roulette and Decades and the Golden Medley, and at the end of each season they had a tournament for $100,000. It was a great game show, lasted 7 years. Also during the 70s, Tom Kennedy hosted other game shows like Break the Bank, 50 Grand, to say the least, and Wheel. And that was it for the 1970 game shows Tom Kennedy hosted. In the fall of 1980, Tom Kennedy became the new host of Password Plus on NBC, as the previous host of Password Plus, Alan Ludden, had to step down because he was battling. He was in the final stages of cancer, and Tom Kennedy took hosting duties, and he hosted it to the end of the run in March of 1982. Tom did a great job hosting Password Plus, and Alan Ludden, the previous host, passed away in the spring of 1981, but his death was not acknowledged on the air at all on Password Plus because the taping schedule was so far in advance, and they didn't acknowledge it until like the last episode. Like Tom mentioned that like the show wouldn't be be made successful without Alan Ludden. That was the mention of it. He mentioned that, and for the next 2 years, from 82 to 84, Tom Kennedy hosted some telethons. And in June of 1984, Tom Kennedy came back hosting a game show called Body Language for CBS, and it was produced by Mark Goodson. And Body Language was celebrities and contestants doing body language to say words. It was like a Solange version of Password, and it lasted like 19 months, and it was such a big game show. Like big time celebrities like Lucille Ball and Betty White and Charles Nelson Riley and Soupy Sales, among others, played the game. And in the fall of 1985 in syndication, Tom Kennedy was tapped to host the nighttime version of The Price is Right, and he had to learn a crash course on all the pricing games within a few days because they had a hectic taping schedule. They maybe taped 5 to 10 episodes of The Price is Right nighttime version in basically 1 or 2 days, and Bob Barker wasn't interested in hosting the nighttime version of The Price is Right, and Tom Kennedy says he would do it, and he learned all the games quickly. It only lasted 1 year in syndication, and this Price is Right got like horrible time slots. I think in New York, it was shown late at night. No station in Boston carried the nighttime version of Price is Right that I could recall, and it only lasted 1 year. And in December of 1986, Tom Kennedy hosted his final TV game show called Wordplay, which was a comedy-type game show where celebrities would have to tell which was the right definition of an unusual word. And Tom Kennedy says this game show with wordplay, he says if it got established and had a nice ratings following, he says this game show could have went on several years, but it only lasted 9 months on NBC, which that got canceled and was the last game show Tom Kennedy hosted. Tom Kennedy hosted 2 failed pilots for game shows. One was called Star Play in 1988, which was co-produced by him and Carol Burnett, like a thing with celebrities. I think they were going on the success of Win, Lose, or Draw, which was hosted by Bert Convy and produced by Bert Convy and Burt Reynolds, and they thought they would get a hit game show with Star Play because Carol Burnett was producing it. She was a big name, and Tom Kennedy, but not enough stations signed on for it in 1988, so the pilot didn't sell. And also, Tom Kennedy developed a show which was a / game show / comedy show / reality show called Tom Kennedy's World of Humor, where he would go to different places like the beauty parlor or farmer's market or the mall, and he would ask the contestants questions about stuff like that, like humor stuff. But the pilot didn't sell, but that concept of World of Humor was actually sold to the BBC in England, and it was reformatted as the Jokers in the Pack, and also that Jokers in the Pack was sold in other countries in Europe, and Tom Kennedy got a licensing fee on that. And also, like, in the mid-90s, he retired from game shows, and he actually did a wonderful World of Game show demonstration to several test audiences at libraries in the West Coast. He had a large quantity of photos of game shows, pictures, and he would narrate them, and he showed it to a test audience in these libraries in the West Coast, but he did not get the success he needed it. People would say was not interested. He was selling it to between the 25 to 54-year-old range, and they didn't like it, and he put it on the shelf, and he says that's it, I'm getting out of the entertainment business, completely retiring from it. And Tom Kennedy appeared on several shows since his retirement, maybe Donna, you talking about game shows, and he appeared on 2003 Game Show Week on Hollywood Squares, and he's also appeared on GSN Live a couple of times, and he's now in retirement. And Tom Kennedy's has a great career as a game show host. He's probably one of the top maybe 5 game show hosts of all time, and he was one of the best. And you could see his work on Past Plus weekends at 9 a.m. on GSN. Well, that's about it for my video blogs of the night. I hope you liked them. Tomorrow, my video profiles will be about my ending series of the 30 top 10 players of all time of each NHL team. I'm going to talk about the Minnesota Wild, and another video blog will be about WWE Hall of Fame and the most successful WWE diva of all time, Trish Stratus. And the third one I can't tell you about right now, but look for more video blogs in the coming days, weeks, months, and years. And all the people I mentioned at the last video post of the night about all the names I'm mentioning, they're going to get video blogs in due time. And don't forget, the feedback's tremendous, and I love it. And don't forget, if you want to shout it out to me by private message, and I will take care of it. Good night, Facebook friends and YouTube followers. See you tomorrow.